broadcast live to the internet or filmed and will be capable of repeated viewing or other such use by third parties. Therefore, by participating in this meeting, you are consenting to being filmed and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings for webcasting and or training purposes. If any public speakers on Zoom do not wish to have their image captured, they should ensure the video setting throughout the meeting is turned off and set to audio only. Please also be aware that if technical difficulties interrupt the meeting that cannot be overcome, I may need to adjourn the meeting, and also if I have a coughing fit. Members are reminded to activate their microphones before speaking and switch them off when they're finished. My name's Councillor Stephen Heather. I'm the chairman for tonight's meeting. To my right is my Vice Chairman, Councillor David Stocker. To his right is, from Democratic Services, Mrs Vivian Messenger. And to the extreme right is Natalie Cole, who's conducting the webcast. To my left is Mr Graham Courtney, who is the Development Management Services Manager, or the Planning Officer. Thank you. Notice we've got 4 public speakers this evening. You should have been briefed prior to this, but there is advice on pages 4 to 5 of the agenda. You will be granted 3 minutes to put your case, and again, activate your microphone before you start and switch it off when you're finished. Thank you. Apologies for absence.
Chairman, I've received apologies. I've received apologies from Councillors Bassett and Pudsley.
Thank you.
Can I give apologies for Councillor Lucas and apologies for lateness from Councillor Matthews, please?
Thank you.
Do you want to just check the mics? Is this mic on up there? Can you get that one switched off? Next to the... That's it. That's why we're coming on. They should be coming on. That's it.
Right. Declarations of interest, members. Right, I'd like to declare an interest then in item 8 by virtue of being a member of the Lee Valley Regional Park Authority. It's a non-pecuniary interest. I will remain for the meeting and I will be a voting chairman. Thank you. Minutes. Can I confirm and sign the minutes of the last meeting on the 15th of November as a true record?
Right.
Thank you. Is there any other business?
None, Chairman.
Thank you. Site visits, I had no prior warning of anything? No, thank you. Right, so the first item is item 8, which is EPF/2601/22, land to the south and east of the former Chimes Garden Centre, Nazing, Waltham Abbey, EN10 6RJ, on pages 8 to 26 of the agenda. And our Planning Officer, Mr Mohammed Rahman, will be taking us through that presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So item 8 relates to land to the south and east of the former Chimes Garden Centre in Nazing. This application is before members as it was called in by Councillor Bassett and also deferred from the 15th November meeting upon the request of the applicant to allow the council to respond to some of the queries FOI request raised by the applicant to which the council has responded to. Members may be aware, I said on the beginning of the agenda, a number of further updates were made. I would add that within the last few days, a major change was made in that the applicant has revised the affordable housing offer. So what was proposed previously was 7.2% affordable housing. The proposal is now at some 16.9%. This is still short, some 2% of what our experts have considered viable, and Mr. Courtney will expand on this point later on the presentation. Just for clarity, officers are no longer recommending reason for refusal number 2 as set out in the agenda. So in terms of the application, this is an outline application for the development of the site to provide up to 65 extra care housing, a commercial unit, 10 self-built or custom-built houses, 4 affordable homes, and open space and play area and so forth. As this is an outline application, all matters are reserved except for access. So members are only considering the principle of the development the access and other material considerations as outlined in the report. Matters relating to scale, as in the building heights, the appearance in terms of the design and the layout, parking, landscaping, these are to be fully assessed via future reserve matters application if consent is granted. So here we have the location plan. This is the site outlined in red. This is the main access way. And this patch of land outlined in blue represents the proposed B&G land the applicant is offering over here. So here's an aerial view of the site as outlined in red. Members may be aware of the previous two schemes granted here, referred to as phase 1 over here and phase 2 over here. And this would be phase 3. So here's the access way. This is one of the matters members can consider under this application. And here's the indicative proposed master plan layout. So it's just indicating where the buildings could be positioned. And here's the patch of B&G land proposed. And phase 1 is indicated here, and phase 2 over here. So in terms of the merits of the case before members, in officers' view, the proposal is clearly inappropriate development in the Greenbelt. There would be additional harm to the openness of the Greenbelt, and it would conflict with the fundamental purpose of keeping land permanently open in accordance with the requirements of the local and national plans. Now, these harms must be afforded substantial weight against the proposal, and very special circumstances are required to clearly outweigh this harm and any other identified harm. Now, this I'll refer to very special circumstances as VSC here, as will be mentioned a few times. So this VSC test it sets a very high bar. So to overcome it, you need to make a very special case. One of the core cases presented by the applicant in terms of VSC is the need for extra care housing. As set out in the report, the council's evidence base identifies a small need of some 120 extra care units until 2033. That's the end of the local plan period. Members may be familiar with the Froggle Lane site in Chigwell, which has been specifically allocated for 105 specialist dwellings. In officers' view, together with this allocated site and some of the other larger allocated sites that will come forward, this identified need would be met. So in other words, this unallocated site before members is not needed for the council to deliver the required specialist dwellings. Of greater, wider public importance is protecting the Greenbelt, which is a protected asset as reflected in local and national policy. So in officers' view, we do not consider there to be any very special circumstances advanced by the applicant to outweigh this harm to the Greenbelt, and therefore there are no VSC to justify the development. The proposal would be contrary to the framework, to the policies of the adopted local plan, and as per paragraph 11 of the framework, Greenbelts are a protected asset, and I have outlined a clear reason for refusing the development in the report, in the agenda as well. So in officers' view, the tilted balance, or also known as the presumption in favor of sustainable development in this instance, would not be engaged. I shall now pass over to Mr. Courtney, who will expand on a couple points and close the presentation.
Thank you, Mohammed. Could you just, rather than me sharing the screen, can you just go to the next slide? Thank you. I agreed that I would just quickly talk you through the financial side of things here, because I have recently been corresponding with the applicant about this. Obviously, we're in a good position, a fortunate position, but an unusual position where we've now, since the printing of the publishing of the agenda, we've sort of reached an agreement in terms of what the contribution would be. So as Mohammed points out, we're no longer recommending a reason for refusal on the basis of the lack of affordable housing. But one thing I did want to just talk through is the just quickly on what the contributions are, but also on the sort of the breakdown, because I'd like to put it to members in terms of what those contributions should be and should be going towards. So as Mohammed said, I mean, this application has been through our viability consultants quite several times. There's been additional information reviewed. The latest review of the information reveals that they consider there's 1.7 million could be provided and the site could be viable. That is on top of the other contributions that would be necessary for the site, and obviously the required profit. Up until recently, the applicant was offering 500,000, but no more. But as I say, we've been corresponding, and as you can see, they are now offering 1.5 million as an affordable housing contribution. The total amount that would be paid is just shy of 3 million, 2.984. You can see there, I think our viability consultants were suggesting that it would be viable at just over 3 million. So, I mean, don't get me wrong, 100,000 is a lot of money, certainly for me and you, but in the grand scheme of things, this is a position where we are happy with the bottom line contributions that are being offered. The only thing I just wanted to, you'll notice there's a few highlighted sections here. Obviously, a lot of these financial contributions are necessary, absolutely have to be paid. FSAC mitigation, I'm not sure there's any, there's no education, but there's certain contributions we absolutely have to have. There's obviously contributions required from the infrastructure development plan, the IDP. Sorry, most of these are that. There are a couple highlighted I just want to run through. So you may notice unhighlighted from the IDP, we have sort of things like open space, green infrastructure, community facilities, sport and leisure. Those are already in here. Sorry, I'm thinking my pointer's working, but this is not me sharing, is it? So number 4, number 6, number 7 are the ones there. But on top of that, what's been offered by the applicant, number 1 and 2, one is provision of community transport, contribution towards community transport in Nazin. I understand, I was speaking to David earlier about this. I understand this is up and running. It's run by a charity. It's a very good service that is used by a lot of the locals. It isn't something that we have asked for. It isn't something we necessarily require. So from an officer point of view, there is argument that money would be better put towards affordable housing contributions. Obviously, we know there's an affordable housing requirement. So there's that one. There's also an additional payment for the community centre, Nazin Parish Community Centre. That's on top of the community facilities payment here. So that's 165,000. Similar thing. Completely appreciate that the parish centre, the community centre, was previously derelict. I think got shut down. I know that they're looking for a new location for the centre. They're keen to get a new community centre down in Nazin, and obviously that's what this is being proposed towards. It isn't something that we necessarily require. So again, from a planning policy point of view, it may be better if that payment went towards affordable housing, but obviously that's up to members whether they feel that meeting these local needs, having these local contributions would be more beneficial than a wider affordable housing contribution. BNG, we've got BNG offset contribution. I don't want to spend too long on this because it is a little bit complicated. Obviously, BNG is now B&G concept. B&G is biodiversity net gain, for anybody who doesn't know what that means. That is now a requirement, so all major applications have to demonstrate that they are providing biodiversity net gain, but actually this site doesn't have to provide that. There's no statutory requirement for that on this site. It is only major sites that were submitted after the 12th of February. Obviously this was long before that. Obviously there are general policy requirements about ecological net gain, and that is something we want to see. But that's been highlighted here mainly because I think originally there was £100,000 put suggested to go towards that. Over time, that actually increased to £350,000. We've actually got that back down to £150,000. We do still think that may be a little bit on the high side for that. So again, there could be arguably some reduction there and some additional on the affordable housing provision. And then the last two, number 10 and number 11, they're monitoring fees. They are required. They are essential. They do need to be part of the heads of terms. Doesn't need to be agreed. The only reason they are highlighted is because we're cautious. We feel they may have been double counted slightly in the viability, because they would have actually come under professional fees, which have already been taken into account. So there's a kind of an argument about that being double counted, but as I say, that is required. So I'm not necessarily suggesting that money would go to, that could be removed from here and added on. But it's more I'm kind of explaining why they're highlighted in there. We've just highlighted those that there are some sort of questions and concerns around. As I say, we're not looking at refusing on the viability side of things. We're happy to accept the viability, but I do feel it is important for members to have a say over this. As I say, particularly when we have issues like this, where there's clearly, and I believe Mr. Jocelyn will speak of this. There's obviously a local need for some of these things, and this will certainly help fund that. But then there's a general need in terms of affordable housing, as Mohammed said. I think we're just shy of 17% here, which is significantly less than the required 40%. Obviously, if we could shift some of that money around, that would increase that percentage and bring it closer to policy compliant. But as I say, this is mainly just to highlight to members. Happy to have a discussion around that and take some views from members on what they feel would be better placed on that. Obviously, this is only if it ends up being recommended for approval. Then this would be relevant. But that's it. As Mohammed says, we are recommending refusal on Greenbelt grounds. So it's over to, back to you, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Graham. We have two public speakers on this application. Excuse me. The first one is Councillor David Jocelyn from Nazing Parish Council. I remind you, Councillor, you've got 3 minutes to state your case.
Do you mind? Oh, no, you won't make. Can you hear me if I stand, Chairman?
You can remain seated if you wish.
I prefer to stand. But if I may just, by way of preamble, deal with the matter that I mentioned to you, so that the members of the committee are aware. I have looked at documentation, like I've got it with me, relating to this. Sorry. Can you hear me now? I looked at the documentation relating to this application, and there's some 40 pages just in the report and the letter that you've had from the applicant. And it does take quite a lot of assimilation. I wish to refer to just one of 2 or 3 paragraphs in the report and in the letter. And rather than you having to look for them, I'm going to give you, they're both paginated, both documents are paginated, and I will then refer to the page numbers to make it. I think that will not only help me, but it hopefully will help you, members of the committee, to track down what I'm saying. So having said that, my 3 minutes can start. Okay? Am I started? Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is David Jocelyn. I'm chairman of Nazing Parish Council Planning Committee. For many years, a garden centre known as Chimes existed in Old Nazing Road, which was closed. Following the closure, a number of commercial enterprises were carried on at the property, the condition of which gradually deteriorated. It became extremely untidy and was largely a mess. Over the course of time, the parish council became very concerned, but obviously had no control over the situation. Accordingly, when proposals were put forward for the development of the land, which were acceptable to the council, it was pleased to give it support. A large part of the land has now been developed, which is referred to as Phase 1, whilst Phase 2 is in the course of construction. The part of the land which is the subject of this application, Phase 3, has been named by the developer as Chimes Older Persons Retirement Village. Nazing Parish Council is strongly in favour of the application, which it considers is a very good project for the village. Report, page 13. I now refer to the applicant's letter. The applicant's proposals are set out on pages 7 to 13. Lack of time prohibits me from commenting on them, but it is the view of the parish council that they would hugely benefit the village. I would urge you to give them careful consideration. I would draw particular attention to the proposed partnership with Epping Forest Community Transport in relation to the C392 bus service, page 11. Section 106 agreement, pages 13 and 14. Details of all the payments which will be made total almost £3 million, including the sum of £165,000 being a contribution to a proposed new community centre in Nazing. There are numerous reasons, in addition to the bus service and community centre, why the council has resolved to support this application. Older persons assisted living housing will allow existing house owners with large houses to downside, which will free up other properties in the district for families. Self-built housing is in great demand. Starter homes will allow young adults the opportunity to get on the housing ladder. Substantial monies are being proposed to be allocated to various facilities in the district, and an extremely large sum is being allocated for affordable housing in the district. If this application is refused, all of these benefits to Epping Forest and Nazing in particular will be lost. Finally, may I remind you that as the tier of local government closest to their communities, parish and town councils are well placed to know where and how development should be permitted. I therefore hope and trust you will agree with the parish council, approve this application and grant consent. Thank you, people.
Thank you, Councillor. Our second public speaker is Mr. Kevin Ellerbeck, and he's the applicant's agent in person. Again, you 3 minutes. Thank you.
Good evening to you all. I hope you had time to read my letter to you. With the assistance and cooperation of officers, we were able to agree with them that 3 of the original 4 grounds for refusal have been removed. This just left whether there are very special circumstances to support our application. The important matters for members to consider are as follows. Our scheme is a landscape-led proposal that provides substantial outside recreation space. This matter was the key factor that members raised when considering the Hill House application at your November committee meeting, when you made it clear that following the COVID pandemic, open space should be provided and is very important. Even though the planning department does not agree that the whole of the site is brownfield, they do accept that at least part of the site is, and there is an existing commercial centre in place for reuse if required. Our scheme will satisfy the clear unmet need provision for older persons housing and self-built housing. Your officers accept that these facilities are required, but they can be provided on allocated sites and that this provision can be drip-fed at a rate of 6 assisted living housing units per year. This just does not make sense. You can only provide the level of care required if you have a minimum size scheme of 60 housing units. These matters have been confirmed by both Essex County Council Adult Social Care and Housing Lynn, that are the lead authorities that advise Epping Forest with respect to their local plan. The applicant is providing a sum of £1.5 million to provide affordable housing on other sites in the district. We are also providing 4 starter homes on site for young first-time buyers. The applicant is also providing a total package of £3 million for infrastructure and social provision in the district. The applicant is providing for an enhanced bus service to call directly into the site. This funding will buy an additional bus and pay for the salary of the new staff. Bus frequency will be increased from hourly to half-hourly service. The applicant is providing substantial funds to Nazing Parish Council towards the provision of the new community centre. We are going to ensure that all of the housing on site will be available to local residents of Nazing on a first-come, first-served basis. Finally, I live immediately next to the site. I am being inundated by my neighbours asking whether they can reserve a bungalow or apartment for themselves or a loved one. There is clearly a substantial demand for this type of facility. This scheme for Chimes is a great scheme and will benefit the community. I hope you can support this application.
Thank you. Could you turn your microphone off, please? Thank you. Members. Who are we going for?
I was going to say Tim.
Right. Councillor Matthews.
Chair, just quickly, I wanted to apologise for lateness. I did make it in the room just as you was introducing it, so hopefully I'm able to comment on the application.
Yeah, and you had no declarations?
And, yeah, I've got no declaration of interest. I'll come back in later if that's okay. Thank you.
Oh, that's not a big Chris.
Councillor Whitbread.
Thank you, Chairman. And first of all, may I pass on behalf of the 2 ward councillors their very strong support for the application. Obviously, I'm the neighbouring district councillor and the county councillor for Nazing as well. And I've listened to very carefully the arguments that have been put forward and the written documentation that's been received in regards to this application. We never take lightly the use of Greenbelt and its uses. And it's always a balanced argument for this type of application. And I'm sure if it is agreed by members this evening, it will still need to go on to district development control because it is outside of the council's local plan policies. However, there is a lot to commend this application to the committee this evening. Not only the benefits that come from the 106 agreement, of course, affordable housing, and particularly the applicant's comments just now about the element of parish homes to the application, which I tend to believe is really important these days, particularly when so many young people are struggling to get properties. I think parish homes is a good way forward. I'm minded to support the application this evening. There are still questions around some of the 106 issues, particularly around the bus element, because obviously whilst I welcome any additional funding for a local bus service, particularly this bus service, we have to remember that will only last so long. What happens after the money runs out? So you have to take all these things into account. As a former Deputy Cabinet Member for Adult Social Care, I suppose I should declare a non-pecuniary interest, and of course I am now, as some will say, the Chancellor of Essex, so with responsibility for finance for the whole county. So I do take these things very seriously. Personally, as I say, I'm minded to vote for the application this evening. I look forward to hearing what other members have to say. Of course, the heaviest weighing thing on my mind is the Greenbelt issues. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Switch microphone off, please. Thank you. Councillor Helen Kane.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I actually have, we've seen this site so many times, so many years for different reasons. I think that at the moment, what we've got in front of us is a very good application, and I will be supporting it. I understand that there are a lot of questions about the green belt, but I think that it is about time this site gets better instead of being so messy all these years.
Thank you. Councillor Sam Combs.
Yeah, thank you very much. Specific question, if I may, on the flood zoning 2 and 3. It's declared as being in flood zone 2 and 3, but there's been a sequential test. Could the officer just sort of comment on the results of the sequential test and what it actually means to the development and the site, how it will actually perform in that flood zone 3?
Yeah, I mean, part of the site is with flood zone 3, where these so the rear gardens of some of these homes, that's within flood zone 3. The rest of the site is within flood zone 2. The applicant has demonstrated that there will be no harm to, there will be no additional flood risk to future occupants. The Environment Agency and the Council, Essex County Council drainage team and our own internal drainage team have raised an objection subject to recommended conditions.
So that brings us back to the Greenbelt issue and the very special circumstances. I kind of follow the argument about the extra care need, because there is the need, and the counter-argument about it being drip-fed over a certain number of years. I take the point that possibly that's not actually going to happen at the rate of 6 a year because of the method of delivery of that care. The 5-year housing need argument, I think that's been dispensed with. But there's a very real argument in terms of very special circumstances about the overall community benefit. Within the package that's been described, we can see the community benefit there. I have a slight reservation about the dramatic reduction of affordable properties in that, bringing it down to just under 17%. Obviously, we've had this discussion, and we're likely to have this discussion on many occasions going forward, but perhaps we could revisit that 106 discussion and see if we can improve on that affordable delivery. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chairman. I will be supporting this, but one, the flood issue on the flood 3 zone, as far as I'm aware, things like that can be dealt with by doing soakaways, and it is only one sort of part of it. The idea with the, I call them pensioners' bungalows or villages, I actually quite like the idea of that, because elderly people, being one myself, you don't want to move away from where you live, and a lot of them are in great big houses, and if there was little bungalows and things round the corner, like this will be, where they live, they'd be quite happy moving out of their big homes to smaller ones. And you've got to accommodate and look forward. I know all this new modern thing, everyone keeps telling me I'm a dinosaur. Well, I don't care if I am. But I'm a resident, and I've got to look at what I would like, because other people are just like me. They don't want to move away from where they've lived all their lives, and they'd be quite happy to downsize and go in these little villages where everything's there for them. And I actually think this is a really nice development this time. Yes, we've got greenbelt issues, but really, can you really honestly say that is a massive big greenbelt area? That's not like fields and a forest. There's houses along the roadside, either side. You've got the river one side. So I actually will support it because I think this is a really good development.
Thank you.
Sorry, Chairman, just if you don't mind me coming in, not on anything Councillor Lee, actually Councillor Kane picked up on that was just touched on about the, I just want to clarify, just so members are fully aware of everything that's going on. I don't think the suggestion from Housing Lynn is that we would be seeking to provide 6 units per year. That's just the annualised figure. That's what they've, that's a way of showing what that requirement is. I don't think they're suggesting we would be seeking 6 per year. It is just, that's the way it's shown. I think there is a breakdown of what they suggest by certain trigger points, but yeah, just wanted to clarify that for members in case there was any confusion there.
sorry, Tim's come back.
Councillor Matthews.
Thank you, Chairman. I've listened to what members have said and sort of tried to keep an open mind to this, but I've still got concerns that we haven't addressed. The officers have presented us with a report with 4 reasons to refuse. First one being the green belt. That was a suitable reason in itself to refuse this application, and then there is nothing before us to address that particular issue. So we've said about the contributions, we've said about the various other things, and I take on members' comments. I too really like the design. I think it's a good idea. I think it's an effective way of dealing with a problem that's coming down the road, with elderly community needing places to live. But we're still stuck with this issue. Perhaps the officer could provide some information on how there's anything here that overrides that number 1 reason for refusal on the report, please.
Well, I don't know if Mohammed was going to come in.
Yeah, well, I mean, as I mentioned previously, and in the agenda, there's a high bar set here. The green belt is a protected asset. It's of public importance. So you need to demonstrate very special circumstances. In officers' view, the cumulative VSE presented by the applicant is not sufficient to outweigh this harm alone. So in officers' view, there are no very special circumstances to overweigh the harm to the green belt, which is a protected asset. And as members would know, roughly 96% of the district is green belt. It's an asset of the district as well as a national asset. So yeah, there is of public importance to protect greenbelt land, keep it permanently open, i.e. absence of any development, except those within the identified exceptions.
And I'll just, sorry, and if you don't mind, I'll just come in to that. So yeah, I was going to say the same thing. Obviously, we've done our own planning assessment and put forward our recommendations. And our recommendation is that there aren't those very special circumstances. Obviously, it is up to members to decide whether that is the case or not. Fully appreciate, that there is, there is going to be a lot of contributions here. There's going to be benefits to the community in terms of those contributions. You've got to remember that those contributions are required for any development of this scheme this size. As I say, our viability consultants say actually marginally more than is being offered could be offered here. Yes, there's some money, and again, it's up to members to decide where that goes, but there is some money offered towards the local community, towards the bus service, things like that. But you've got to remember that money is coming away from the affordable housing. The bottom line figure on any scheme of this size would be, it's a policy requirement. Actually, it's below policy requirement because it doesn't provide the 40% affordable housing. So you can't really take that as any of that as very special circumstances. Any scheme of this size, we would expect that kind of contribution and more. So really, the starter homes, again, that's kind of akin to affordable housing. So again, we are under providing affordable housing here. So again, it's not really a very special circumstance because actually it's less than we would require. I suppose the self-build homes, that's something different. We don't get very often. We obviously do have a need for self-build homes. So there is an argument there that obviously could be given additional weight or given weight in this instance. Largely it comes down to the need for the actual care facilities. The applicant did obviously mention Hill House, which was before members in November last year, where this was originally supposed to come. I vividly recollect, even though we weren't discussing need there, I think there were some concerns from members around the lack of need in that instance. So I just want to remind members of that, because that wasn't long ago that you guys were saying you weren't convinced there was a need. Now, you would have to be saying, actually, we now do feel there's a need. And the only other thing I will point out is that we did recently refuse I don't know, I haven't got in front of me whether it was an extra care provision or if it was a care home, what exactly it was, but it was some sort of retirement home or care home just on the site at the front, so the top right, just to the rear of 83, 90, that site there, they put in for a care home, and we did refuse that on impact on Greenbelt, lack of need.
Councillor Matthews.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you very much for that very detailed response. I think my second and third point were both covered in there, in the sense my second point was going to be the issue around the affordable homes. We have many applications before us, and when they don't meet the 40%, we don't allow it, and a lot of them are a lot closer to 40% than this particular application in front of us, at only 17%. And then my third point was I was at that meeting and recalled a discussion about the debate that surrounded around the need for care homes and care facilities of all types. And we were told, and there was a lot of debate suggesting that that need wasn't as great as initially explained, and we actually refused that application on the grounds of that. So I can't see what's changed in the last 3 months. Thank you.
Councillor Hellenheim.
I think what we need to do is take its application in its own merit. We can't actually compare applications, and I think we've been told that by the officers quite a lot. The other thing I wanted to take into consideration is the local knowledge. We have here a parish council that supports that application, and I believe that the local knowledge gives a lot of weight on something like that.
Thank you.
Sorry, I'm just going to come in there. I don't like directly disagreeing with members, but actually that's not the case. The decision on this has to be made on planning policy and planning grounds, not on sort of local need and support. It isn't a case of, you know, well, we've got a lot of support for this, the parish council likes it, therefore it's okay. It has to be based on policy grounds.
Councillor Samcombe.
Yeah, thank you for letting me come back. What it boils down to here is the recommendation from the officers is to refuse on the Greenbelt reasons, because there aren't very special circumstances been demonstrated. There's a discussion about the need of extra care, but there's certainly the evidence of dramatically reduced affordable provision in this. So I'm going to fall in line with the officers, I think, on this one.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree in the concept of this is brilliant. At the moment, I'm looking for accommodation for my 89-year-old mother, and a scheme like this is superb. And the one I'm looking at is on brownfield, so it's not affecting the green belt in Bedfordshire. Could you just remind me, please, how much percentage of this site is brownfield, please?
So it's 16%, I believe. That's 16, 16. 16, so 16.
So that. Sorry. Yeah.
Just this section here, this small section over here, is previously developed land. The rest of the site is no longer PDM.
Right.
So just this small section.
That's 84% Greenbelt.
Yeah. Thank you. So,
I think it'd be fair to say, my starting point would always say we don't build on the green belt. But I think that is a subjective, because I agree with Councillor Lee, is this green belt open fields, forests, or is it actually the edge of an urban area that's not in good condition? And you know, if we turn around and said, oh, we're not going to develop on it, do we think that people are going to be strolling around this and enjoying the amenity of this as part of the green belt? I don't think so. So I think that the special reason is, you help us, officer, is that I actually do think that this is the edge of an urban area. There is a demand for this. It's supported, whether or not it's a planning reason, but it's supported by the parish, the district, and a county councillor who represent this area. That feels like a strong reason to me to support it.
thank you. Councillor Whitbread.
Sorry, again. Shades of green, that argument is, and there is no such thing as shades of green with Greenbelt. We have the purposes of the Greenbelt, absolutely acceptable to look at how an area of Greenbelt land meets those purposes. There's obviously 5 purposes of the Greenbelt, I believe, off the top of my head, and they're absolutely perfectly acceptable to assess how it meets those needs. But there is no such thing as a shades of green argument. That has been well and truly thrown out by courts and inspectors. So we can't say it's a scrubby bit of land, therefore it's okay to build on. It's greenbelt, it's designated greenbelt, it has to be treated as such.
Councillor Whitbread.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I've heard the argument made many times over scrubby bits of land. In fact, we've been told sometimes we should develop a scrubby piece of land. So, and I understand the officer's position because it's consistency in planning, and that's always a difficult thing. As I said at the very beginning this evening, I'm minded to vote for approval, but there are issues around that. And I think if this committee is minded to vote for approval this evening, then there are still questions to be asked when this comes to district development control around whether or not the level of contribution is correct. Bearing in mind, whichever way we look at it, this is a pure greenbelt site, other than 16%. So we have to make sure that the contribution is right. And I think members of the development committee will need to have assurances and understanding on the affordable housing level in particular, because this is a greenbelt site. That's very different to a brownfield site where we've had discussions before. Very, very different indeed. And therefore we have to make sure that if we are overturning our own greenbelt policies, we are doing it for good community gain, in my opinion. And we also need to look at the adjoining fields, and could this set a precedent that opens up the greenbelt to further development? Because you can very much encroach onto a piece of greenbelt and unlock the potential for other fields beyond. So you're eradicating the greenbelt. So you do have to be very careful on these type of decisions. I would also suggest that if we are minded to support this evening, that the first step of the Development Control Committee should be to actually visit the site and understand what type of greenbelt it is. Because, to be honest with you, it is a really balanced decision. It's not an easy one. There are no reasons when you're dealing with greenbelt not to go soft on affordable housing, because it's greenbelt, so it's just natural gain. So we do have to be very tough and very, very strong on greenbelt and protecting greenbelt and doing things for the right reasons. So I would ask those questions are answered when this comes to development, if it comes to development.
Yep, no, absolutely. Only thing I was going to, obviously, I'm not going to come back on those questions. I don't think you expected me to come back on those issues. Now, the only thing I was going to suggest or mention, we have had it before where a suggestion has been made, where something's been referred up to DDMC, a suggestion has been made about a site visit. I just want to make it clear to members that can only be a suggestion. You cannot decide that they are going to do a site visit. We are happy to take that back to the chairman, ask the chairman if that is something that they feel is necessary. But it is purely a suggestion. I just wanted to clarify that.
Right, thank you then. The officer's recommendation is to refuse permission. All those in favour of the officer's recommendation?
4. 4.
Thank you. Those against?
5.
Abstentions?
2.
Was that 2? Right, therefore, have we got somebody proposing why we should grant the application?
Chairman, there's a second option. We could just vote to push it upstairs to DDMC.
That was my next move. Right, therefore, this application will be referred to DDMC.
Sorry, Chairman, I'm quite happy on that basis, but you have had a vote to refuse the officer's recommendation. That's different to having a drawn vote that you send straight to DDMC. Should there not be some form of commentary to go with that?
Well, yes, it is. It's contrary to policy, so therefore it will be referred. Oh, sorry, yes, because the vote is contrary to the policy, then it will have to be referred to the DMC. Thank you, Councillor.
Actually, sorry, can I just come in? I don't know if Vivian would have come in here anyway. No, I think it's slightly more nuanced than that, and slightly more, because actually it would only automatically have to go to DDMC if it is recommended for approval, because that would be the decision that's contrary to policy. But I think what's happened here is obviously the vote to refuse has not been supported, but nobody's put the suggestion forward to approve the permission. Instead, I think the suggestion, although I'm not sure, does it need to be seconded and voted on? I don't know, but I think the suggestion is actually, rather than that it just goes straight to DDMC. But obviously, members are welcome to put a motion forward.
By all means. All right, thank you very much. So by minority reference, this application has been referred to DDMC. Thank you very much for your assistance. Thank you. Right, so we now move on to agenda item 9, which is EPF/2844/22, Nether Kidders Farm, Laundry Lane, Nazing, Waltham Abbey, EN92DY, on pages 27 to 36. Mohammed, are you taking us through this one?
No, that's me.
No, it's Graham. Sorry. Oh, yes, you're doing a two-minute one, sorry.
Thank you, Chairman. Right. I don't know if we... No, I was waiting for the lights to go down, but that's fine, not a problem, not a problem. So this application relates to a change of use of existing buildings to create free dwellings and an associated carport. The application is before committee since it has been called in by Councillor Bassett. It is recommended for refusal due to the reasons laid out within the agenda. As can be seen here, the application site is situated within the Greenbelt. To the north, just here, is a Grade 2 listed building in which these barns form part of the setting. So this shows the Grade 2 listed farmhouse up here, and Laundry Lane, which members may be familiar with, but it is an extremely narrow road, as can be seen here. These show the various buildings that are proposed for conversion. And these are plans of the current structures on site. So this is the proposed layout. This barn here would be converted into 2 dwellings. Barn B down here would be 1 dwelling, and Barn C over here would be used as a cart lodge for the whole site. The access would be here, obviously be a shared access, and this would also be shared with the existing stables, which would also utilise that access. So Barn A, which is this one here, would become 1 3-bed and 1 4-bed property. Barn B would be a 4-bed property. And then Barn C would be used, as I say, as a carport for the site with 6 spaces in it. So this application follows a previously refused scheme to demolish the existing buildings and erect 4 new detached houses. This was refused consent due to the impact on the Greenbelt, its unsustainable location, its design and layout and subsequent impact on the nearby listed building, harm to future occupants due to the layout and the impact on the Epping Forest Special Area of Conservation. All of these matters were previously highlighted to the applicant at pre-application stage. I'm just going to go back to this because it's a useful plan. So whilst it is recognised that the conversion of existing buildings can be an exception to inappropriate development in the Greenbelt, and this is undoubtedly a better scheme than the previous one, many of the same concerns do remain. The subdivision of the site, its change in use and character, and the resulting residential paraphernalia is still considered to be harmful to the openness of the Greenbelt. The layout is still likely to cause a loss of amenity to future residents, in particular Barn B. The site is still an unsustainable location, and there's nothing that overcomes the harm from this. The Conservation Officer still considers the change in character to detrimentally impact on the setting of the listed building. And whilst we are satisfied that any harm to the FSAC can be mitigated without a signed and agreed legal agreement, a reason for refusal must be advanced with regards to this. Therefore, the application is recommended for refusal. Back to you.
Thank you. We have one public speaker on this, and that's Mr. Stephen Hayhurst. He's the applicant's agent. Again, Mr. Hayhurst, you have 3 minutes. If you switch your microphone on.
Thank you. This is a scheme to convert a group of run-down brownfield buildings into 3 attractive, well-designed houses which would not require any enlargement. But the officers say the improvements would harm the setting of a listed building, even though it is 60 metres away. Yet only 20 metres from the listed building, an industrial estate has been allowed to become established. In my view, if our scheme would improve the appearance of run-down buildings, it must also improve the setting of the listed building. Our structural engineer demonstrated that the buildings are permanent and substantial and capable of conversion. On page 32, the officer's report says there will be more traffic than the existing use, but our evidence is that trips would reduce by 84 per day compared with the full resumption of the lawful use, which would be inevitable if this application failed. The officers criticise the proposed gardens, but these would take up 430 square metres less than the menage it is proposed to remove. They criticise the proposed boundary treatment, but the plans show 174 metres of new native hedgerow planting along garden boundaries. They criticise outbuildings when there are none, and you can impose a condition removing PD rights for these. They have not taken into account the large area of hard standing near the site entrance, which would be replaced with new planting. Officers now routinely say that any location outside a town or village is unsustainable. If maintained, this approach would make living in the countryside an unachievable option, except for those lucky enough to live in one of the sensible, small-scale housing schemes on brownfield sites permitted in the last 10 years. And I referred to 4 local examples in a note I circulated to members. One potential impact of building on remote sites is the CO2 emissions from the extra vehicles. But we've proved that the traffic would be much greater if the lawful use resumed. In any case, the increased adoption of electric vehicles will reduce emissions anyway. As to the alleged social harm caused by countryside living, surely high-density urban living should be a matter of choice rather than compulsion. The alleged amenity impact is overstated. There is only one angled view from an upstairs bedroom window to the affected garden of Plot 3. This could be softened by screening or redesigned. The only passing traffic would be the neighbours' cars passing to and from the carport. The proposed arrangement would be better than that found on many suburban estates. The affected garden would have an area of 230 square metres, very large for a new housing development. As to the FSAC objection, this can easily be remedied by a legal agreement if required. Therefore, please reject this overzealous recommendation for refusal and support this positive, attractive scheme, bringing a brownfield site into a new use. Thank you.
Thank you. Members. Councillor Lee. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, I do know this area quite well. And the barns are a bit run down, and they would certainly look better converted and being used for people to live in. Laundry Lane is quite a problem in the district with fly tipping and everything else. And I think if more people lived down there, that could be resolved because there would be people about. And there'll certainly be less traffic than what would be there now with the menage and the people with horses, because I know by the menage on the Crooked Mile, They have lights on half the night, and they've got people in and out and dogs barking and horses going on, and I hear nothing but complaints about it. So it will certainly be less traffic, and I actually think converting the barns, because before it was turned down because they were new houses, which I wouldn't have supported, but converting the barns, they're not, as far as I can see, and with the planting they're going to do, it's a much better option. So I will actually be supporting this, because I think it's a really good scheme.
Thank you. Councillor Whitbread.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm struggling more on this one than the last from the officer's direction, to be honest. I always thought that if you had barns that could be converted sympathetically to the location and improve the location as an enhancement, and they were no longer required for farming purposes, that was legitimate. I know this road well, as Councillor Lee does, and it's I think it could be enhanced if that area was tidied up. I do think there's other issues to answer. Again, the tightening up of some of the 106 elements to this application certainly need to be looked at to make sure that, again, we're protecting the location. I don't believe it will lead to any more vehicle movements than currently exist, if I'm honest. This is a country lane. These will be tucked away. Are they sustainable? Is anyone who lives in the country sustainable? That's part of your choice, isn't it? You know, we're meant to be a country that believes in choice. And if I choose to live down a country lane and I have to have a car, so be it. Cars aren't illegal, although Mayor Khan might like to make them illegal. You know, so I do think there's merits to this application. It's going to go to District Development Control if we approve it this evening. Oh, it's not. I'm wrong.
Not if you...
Sorry.
Not if you vote?
Not necessarily. So slightly different, obviously, with the previous scheme that was a significant development on a greenfield, greenbelt site. As Councillor Whitbread, you already pointed out, and Councillor Lee, well, everyone's aware this is the conversion of existing buildings. This does potentially, you know, there is an exception within the MPPF as to why this could be considered to not be inappropriate development. Again, officers don't consider that balance is quite there and has some concerns, but obviously it is within members' remit to come to their own conclusions on that balance. And I wouldn't necessarily, depending on how the discussion and the vote go, this wouldn't be one I would suggest automatically has to go to DDMC if approved.
Thank you, Chairman. That's really helpful, and it shows that I'm not the planning expert as others on this committee. But what I would suggest here is that we do tighten up matters along the lines of what the officer suggested earlier on. But personally, I'm minded to vote for granting.
Thank you. Councillor Stocker.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Can I ask the officer, can you show me the picture of the Laundry Road? And is that just a narrow track suitable for one vehicle at a time? Or are there passing bays along that road?
So here you go.
So it literally is one vehicle at a time, isn't it? There's no... So are there passing, you know, pull-in where you can pull out down there?
Councillor Lee may know more than I do in terms of that.
Do you know... Sorry, Jean, do you know if there's...
I can't say as I've taken any notice of that, but you've got the lorries taking the horses backwards and forwards, up and down all the time, and I've actually seen a van pull in there and empty all the rubbish out and then shoot off the other way. So there are areas, obviously, that you can turn around and pull in because you've got all that going on, all farm equipment and stuff going backwards and forwards. But it is a country lane.
All right, OK, thank you. So, Helen,
excuse me.
Councillor Helen Kane.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I have problems, actually, understanding the reason for refusal. I think that the barns had it, and I think the new development will actually look nice. And if people choose to live so far away from, you know, town centres, things like that, so be it. They made their decision themselves.
Thank you. Any more? Councillor Matthews.
Thank you, Chairman. I too was of the same opinion as Councillor Whitbread that there's existing barns there, so cannot see really what the issue would be in terms of the green belt. We spoke extensively about the importance of the green belt in the last application and the fact that there isn't shades of green, and I take all those points on board. The fact that there is buildings there, I know we're discussing this particular application, but in previous applications we've talked about taking things away and putting new things there. We're talking about converting the barns that are there in situ. So for me, that doesn't contradict our policy on the green belt as far as my understanding of it is. And looking at the I don't also agree with the second point of refusal for the unsustainable location. As Councillor Whitbread rightly pointed out, you could make that argument for anyone living in the countryside, and most of our district is made up of people living in that environment. So I'm minded to support this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, members, the officer's recommendation is to refuse this application. All those in favour of refusal?
None, Chairman.
All those against?
Unanimous.
Thank you. Therefore, we need a reason for approval. Do we have anyone to propose? Councillor Lee.
Well, one would be that they're removing all that hard standing by the entrance and putting trees and bushes and that there. So I just think that it is going to be a massive improvement than the tumble-down barns, plus it will give homes, 3 homes. I don't know if that's sufficient for us going against. Is that Graham? Yes, no?
Yeah, I mean, it's up to members what they consider to be the... well, as I say, it's not necessarily a very special circumstance argument needed here. It's a balance. So if members don't consider that this would cause harm to the openness of the green belt, then obviously it can meet that exception. Obviously, the provision of additional housing is always a material consideration, so that certainly weighs in its favour. And additional landscaping, of course, that also can be seen as a benefit. So yeah, they can all be very much reasons to approve.
Yeah. Yeah, so providing homes and enhancing the area. Councillor Whitbread.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman, and I agree. This is about the enhancement of the locality. I think that's the key argument for this particular application. But I think it's very important to condition as well that whilst we are losing free barns to create accommodation, which I actually sort of applaud because I think it's the right thing to do with rundown barns if they're not in use, we need condition that there will be no additional barns added, because that would then detract from the green belt. There can be no replacement barns for these. No. So it is literally, we are trading off existing barns that are no longer used for residential. But I do not believe that we should allow, whether that be through taking away permitted development, further barns in this location to replace the existing. And I'm now going to be told I'm completely wrong.
No, not at all, not at all. Obviously, we would, happy for members to generally delegate conditions to officers. We can obviously put on all the sort of standard conditions, but it's always useful to have a steer from them in terms of what they require. I mean, obviously, removal of permitted development rights would be pretty standard for barn conversions anyway, but that would obviously be to remove that right to build any outbuildings. I don't think there'd be obviously there are sort of agricultural permitted development in terms of building barns, but this isn't actually an agricultural site anymore. So I don't think there'd be any requirement to remove anything like that. Everything else would theoretically need planning permission, so we would just take that into account. One thing while I'm speaking, just because the applicant's agent did mention about the the removal of the menage. And I just wanted to check whether that is a material consideration that members have taken on board, because again, would we want to have that as a condition that has to be removed from site? It's up to members whether they consider that is a material consideration and that's something that they've taken into account as part of this. I don't think there's going to be a problem. I'm seeing some nods from the applicant that they're happy to remove that, but it's whether members feel a condition is necessary for that.
Councillor Matthews.
Yeah, I think we should have that in as a condition because we're talking about enhancement. Our reason for going against the officer's recommendation this evening has been that we don't think it has a negative impact on the green belt, a substantial impact on the green belt, and we think it's an enhancement. So we need to make sure that that's seen all the way through, and part of that and part of the application applicant's proposal was to remove the menage. So I think that should be make sure that happens.
I think the most important thing is the fact it's providing homes as well. Councillor Green, did you want to say no? Right, so, sorry, have we got a second of Councillor Lee's thing? Councillor Matthews.
Just very quickly before you go to the vote, I just want to clarify as well, or just get confirmation from members that this would obviously be an approval subject to conditions and a legal agreement, because
yes,
obviously we would require that for the FSAT mitigation. Brilliant.
Thank you. Yes, we will. I'll try and find my place in my bit of paper as well. So, right, can we have a vote then, members, please, on accepting that going forward? So, that's what I'm saying, to approve it, yes. That's the word I was struggling to find. So, those in favour?
Unanimous, Chairman.
Right, thank you. Now I can go back to try and find where my place is. Right, so agenda item 10 is EPF stroke 2106 stroke 23, Hannah Nursery, Silston Road, Waltham Abbey, E4 7RG. And Mr. Courtney will take us through that one.
I haven't got my microphone on, just letting that go. Right, thank you, Chairman. I'll be brief on this one, I promise. So this application is for the retention of one fascia sign at Hannah Nursery, which is a long-standing horticultural nursery that has diversified into commercial use, some elements with consent and others without. The application is recommended for approval, subject to conditions. It is before members due to a number of objections received from local residents. So there were previously a number of unauthorised signs to the front of the site, some of which may have been associated with unauthorised uses. However, as can be seen here, these signs have been removed, and now there is a single sign remaining. Yeah. As members are no doubt aware, the only consideration for advertisement consent is regarding public safety and amenity. The applicant claims that the sign is required to signpost drivers to the site. Now, personally, knowing how difficult this stretch of road can be, it is considered that anything that assists the direction of traffic, and especially lorries, would be welcomed. Concern has been raised by residents about the size of the sign, and whilst it is fairly large, it is a very simple single sign that officers, to be honest, do not consider to be particularly harmful. As such, the application is recommended for approval, subject to conditions.
Thank you. Councillor Hillenheim.
Thank you, Chairman. I know the site very, very well, and there is a lot of history with it. Number one, I hate retrospective applications that come through to us, and that was only because of the residents, you know. The other thing is, as it is retrospective, what can we do now? And it is a plain sign. We can't do anything, unfortunately. So, reluctantly, I would just go with approve with conditions.
Thank you. Any other members? I must admit I'm quite surprised it's even in front of the committee. But right, the officer's recommendation is to approve the retrospective application with conditions. All those in favour?
Unanimous, Chairman.
Thank you. Right, agenda item 11 is EPF stroke 2179 stroke 23, the Black Swan Public House, Common Road, Waltham Abbey, EN9 2DF. And that's on pages 44 to 51. Mr. Rahman will take us through this.
Thank you, Chair. Item 11 relates to land adjacent to the Black Swan Public House in Roydon, which is a Grade 2 listed building. This application is before members as it has been called in by Councillor Green. The proposal is to vary condition 2 plan numbers attached to the main consent, which was for the construction of 2 new detached dwellings, a 2-storey house and a bungalow. The proposal before members is a variation to 1, the bungalow, to add 2 front dormer windows and 3 rear roof lights. And in terms of the whole site, the other change is to the front landscaping, the addition of a second vehicle point, access point, and a 2-meter high front boundary treatment.
So, oh, sorry, Mohammed, are you flicking through the slides? Because we've just got...
No, I haven't got to the slides.
Oh, okay, okay.
It was just an introduction. So here's the slides now. Here's the location plan. So formerly it was within the curtilage of the Black Swan over here. Since the grant of the approval, this section here outlined in red is its own planning unit. So here's a before and after picture of the site. So over here you can see it was a pub garden. That's the Black Swan listed building over here. And at the bottom you can see this is the application site. And I believe construction is underway. Here's an aerial view. So this is the site over here. This is the application site over here. So here are the proposed, approved and proposed site plans. So on the left-hand side, we have the approved landscape, approved site plan over here. And on the right-hand side, we have the proposed landscaping and the access point and the boundary treatment before members. So as you can see, the main change is with the revised, with the proposal, there's less landscaping to the front, but there's more hard standing now. This is the second access point over here. Members can see there was only one single access point at on the approved scheme over here. And I'm not sure how visible is here. It is on this slide, but here is the new gates and the front wall, which would be 2 meters at the highest point. So here's the proposed 2 meter high fence. So at the highest point, as in where the brick piers are, that'll be 2 meters. The rest of the fence would be 1.8 meters high. So this is the 2-story house previously approved. This is the second property, the bungalow. And as mentioned, one of the changes was the addition of these 2 front dormers to this bungalow. So here are the approved and proposed street scene plan. So we have the approved over here. And the proposed at the bottom. So the main visible change would be to the actual dwellings themselves would be the 2 front dormer windows. And this would be the view from the street in terms of the boundary treatment. So just to summarize the case, so both the council's tree and conservation officers have identified substantial harm from these proposed variations. So the proposed dormer windows to the bungalow, the additional front landscaping, the second access point, and the 2-meter high fence, all these combined would lead to an urbanizing effect, which and also harming the setting of the Black Swan Public House, which is a listed building, and the Nazing and South Royden Conservation Area. There's no convincing justification for officers to reach a different conclusion, and for these reasons, and as set out in full in the agenda, officers recommend planning permission is refused. Thank you, Chair. It's the end.
Thank you. Councillor Green, as you called it in, would you like to...
Thought it would be rude not to start.
Oh, sorry, I forgot all about him. I do apologise, sir. Yes, you have, indeed. A public speaker, Mr Stuart Satchfield, is the applicant in person. Again, so you have 3 minutes.
Good evening, Chairman, Committee. The application's in 2 parts. The first part is concerning the bungalow. The proposal here is for 2 small front-facing dormer windows, each with a pitch roof. The dormer windows are hardly noticeable within the backdrop of the main roof behind. The design is in keeping with the pub dormer windows, and as the bungalow is 18 metres from the pub and separated by a high timber fence, the impact cannot be described as harmful to the pub or wider area. The rear Velux-type windows have already been deemed acceptable by the conservation team. The second part of the application is to change the front gardens of the 2 properties. The proposal is for each property to have their own access off the road instead of shared access. Essex Highways have no objection to this. The frontage of the 2 properties will be black stained natural looking timber fence with red brick piers, each side of the pier entrance gates. These gates are to be stained too. Trees and shrubs will be densely planted in front of the fence on the street side to soften the appearance of the fence even more. The 2 spaces of each house will be directly behind the fence and out of sight to passers-by. The reason for this change is to move the driveways and cars from the front of the houses and replace the current driveways and hard surfacing with lawn, trees and shrubs. As stated, the cars, where proposed, will be invisible from the road instead of on show. In my opinion, this will be a good thing in the conservation area. There is very little, if any, additional hard surface compared with the approved design. It's just different place away from the houses. There will be less noise and disruption also to the house occupants. The idea of the fence is to mimic the large hedge to the front of the pub which screens some of their parking. This is exactly what I'm trying to achieve. Also, the new crossover driveway will match nicely with my neighbours' brick piers and gates. They also have a tall hedge which screens their driveways. My development will most definitely enhance the somewhat scruffy industrial residential mixed area around the listed building. To sum it up, there's nothing really I'm asking for that hasn't been approved recently within a few hundred yards. For example, fair lawn and brambles, which are both either adjacent to listed building or open countryside. There is a large mixture of hard landscape, brick piers, gates, even garages along the roadside. My application is much more natural and soft looking in design. I hope you can appreciate what I'm trying to do, which I believe will be a big improvement over what I already have permission for. I'm passionate about this because it is going to be my home as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Green.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I think, Mohammed, if you wouldn't mind flicking back to the picture of the site, because I think the objections that have been put forward here, to me, are very subjective. And I can't argue with the officer's view that they think that this is harmful to the listed building there. But if you know, and I don't mean this one, the one that's the more aerial view, if you know this site and you look at what's around it, you look from the street towards the pub and you are looking at those buildings behind it. Looking to the left, this site is quite away from the pub, so I don't actually see that it is harmful and impactful on that listed building. I also personally, again, it's subjective, I think that the two windows that are proposed actually make the building look better. And the last point, which is around the entrance and exit onto the drive, again, I think actually, given that Essex Highways had no objection to it, actually makes a lot of sense. And viewed from the street scene, it fits in. And so I don't agree, again, it's a subjective view, that that is sort of a more urban look in a rural environment. But I appreciate it's a subjective view, but I'm minded to support the application.
Thank you. Councillor Whitbread.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. An area I know particularly well. Went there to Black Swan many times as a child with my dad and mum. So I know the particular location well. I agree with Councillor Green. This is a subjective consideration from the officer's point of view. I understand where they're coming from. However, I disagree. I'm more strongly minded to support the applicant in this particular case. If you look around you in the setting of the grade 2 listed building, actually this can only be an enhancement to the locality. It certainly will enhance the roadside. It will also, I believe, improve road safety for any vehicle coming out of the property. That's a busy piece of road sometimes down there, and sometimes the speeds can be quite excessive. So actually, bearing in mind you've got the old Weatherwhite's garage, which is quite industrial these days, just opposite the Black Swan almost. Then you've got this next door to it. I can support this application very easily.
Thank you. Councillor Lilly.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I will support the application. I just wonder, instead of having hard standing in the front for the cars, if they had that heavy-duty plastic that the grass grew through, because on that corner, the flooding and the potholes is terrible. So I have no problem with the buildings being done at all, but I just wonder if perhaps instead of hard standing, something could be done to make sure that it's permeable for the amount of flooding that happens on that corner. But I will be supporting the...
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think we would specify grasscrete is usually what they refer to that as. I don't think we would specifically request that, but yeah, certainly. I mean, again, members are if members are minded to approve, hopefully they look to delegate conditions to officers. We would probably be seeking either a surface water condition that seeks them to provide details of the surface water runoff and how that's going to be dealt with, or we may just say put in permeable paving. Yeah, it depends on how strongly. I haven't looked at what the land drainage comments are as to whether we need the full-on details, or we. But yeah, certainly we would be seeking permeable paving regardless.
I'm not sure if Tim
Councillor Matthews.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm in agreement with my fellow councillors on this. I see no issue with this application whatsoever. In terms of the impact on the Black Swan, I agree. I think the dormers enhance it. They actually improve that. And I actually just took a quick look on Google Maps Street View just to look further to the left of the image we've got in front of us. And we can see the 3 houses adjacent to the property, but actually the 9 houses along that road all have open hard stand driveways, which the applicant is requesting here. So I can't agree with the officer's opinion that enhances urbanisation of the area when the adjacent 9 properties all have the exact same conditions. And just, I know this area very, very well and drive down there most days. Just to put Councillor Lee's mind at rest, the flooding on the corner, although you would never go so far to say it's a hill, the ground does rise quite considerably from that junction to where this property is, and I've never known there to be a flooding issue with the pub where the driveway actually sits lower than the road, so I can't see there being any issues with flooding on this particular site. Thank you.
Councillor Green, you want to come back?
Whilst I welcome Councillor Matthews' comments, I think Councillor Lee's point is more that water will run to the corner where we've seen flooding. So I do think that Councillor Lee makes a very valid point that a discussion with the applicant around whether, subject to the drainage, that could be a requirement, I think is reasonable, and I think that good local insight.
Thank you. The Conservation Officer is concerned about the trees and planting, but we've just been assured that will be the 2 metre fence outside sort of sticks a little bit with me, but if they're going to plant it very nicely, then that's very good. And the thing that it's near a Grade 2 listed building, we've just said you can convert the barns next to a Grade 2 listed building. Yes, I must admit I'm mindful to support this. The officer's recommendation is to refuse permission. All those in favour? All those against?
0. Unanimous.
Abstentions? Was there any? Sorry, I wasn't looking.
None.
Right, have we got a motion for granting permission for this?
As I called it in, and with the officer's help, I think that the point I've made, and I don't know if this is grounds to not go with the officer's recommendation, is these are subjective, and we don't agree with you.
I'm going to pass the buck here. This is very much the comments from listed building advisor and the landscape advisor. As planning officers, we are perfectly comfortable going against the advice. It is purely advice from listed builders, the conservation officers and the landscape officers. Usually we have to have kind of solid planning reasons and a planning balance to go against that. As officers, we weren't quite convinced that we had that, but obviously, again, members are more than capable of coming up with their own balance. And as you say, Councillor Green, it's all very subjective, so there's absolutely no problem with going against the advice of the conservation officer and the landscape officer.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Probably the easiest set of words would be something along the lines of that members are minded that this application is not is not detrimental to the setting of the listed building.
And if you deal with, and you'll deal with the delegated.
Yeah, as long as if members are happy to delegate conditions to us. Obviously, I've got down about the drainage. We'll make sure that that's covered, and we will make sure the landscaping is covered. Obviously, to ensure we get some planting in front of that, that fencing. But otherwise, yeah, it will be standard conditions. If you're happy for us to draft those and deal with those.
A seconder for that proposal then. Councillor Helen Kane, all those in favour?
Unanimous.
Thank you. Is there any reason to exclude the public and the press?
No, Chairman.
The public's going.
All right. I therefore close this meeting at 20:32. Thank you.